Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 3 of your first book podcast. If we haven't met before, my name is Christina, and if we have met before, well, welcome back. And I am currently going through the process of writing and publishing my first book. So today, I just wanted to have a bit of an informal chat on feeling embarrassed to tell people you're writing a novel. I know when I first officially made the decision in my mind to write a book, it was twofold. First, I wanted to just try out writing a book. Was it a romance, fantasy, mystery, thriller? I started to think of all the types of genres I enjoy reading, and then I started to speculate on what genres I might enjoy writing. I had an idea of setting, hint, one of my favorite cities, and a very loose idea of plot. And I knew if I wanted to write a book, I was obviously going to need to write characters, right? So I opened up Google Drive and I created a folder for about 4 to 5 characters. I created their bio sheets and I answered some silly questions like, what do they do on a bad day? What is their personal style? And then some deeper questions like, what was their childhood like? That kind of thing. What was their relationship like with their parents? And to be honest, I am still discovering some of my characters' backstories for the New Grad Magic series. And by the way, if you today watching this, listening to this, are someone who typically enjoys leaving book reviews, I wanted to let you know that I currently have applications open to receive an advanced copy of the New Grad Magic first ebook before publication. So I will link that application in the YouTube description or show notes. Okay, so number one, I made the decision to write the book, right? I started brainstorming and playing around in Google Drive. The second thing I did was decision number two was to make the decision to publish the book. So currently I'm recording this in November 2023. And right now I am 98% confident that I want to pursue self-publishing. Like I am just so excited for how much independent self-publishing can offer. Like for example, like I got to source my own editors, like pick an editing team, an ARC team, advanced reader copy team, source my own cover designers. And basically I am just learning how to build my own author team. And that has been very, very exciting. I can make a whole nother episode on that at some point. But the second decision I made was that I want to self-publish the book. So if you're listening to this, I'm going to guess that you're at the point where 2 decisions have been made. You've decided that number 1, you are writing the book. And number 2, you are publishing the book. Number 3, I'm hoping you're finishing the book. And number 4, you'll be marketing the book, right? But anyways, after making these 2 decisions, the next logical question you might ask yourself is, am I going to tell anyone about this? And who? And how am I going to say it? I know that for me, at first, I told just some few very close friends and family about my dream to write a book, just in general. And then I started to make hints that I was writing a book on my author Instagram page. And occasionally I would tell clients at my day job that I was writing a book, but this was only if the topic came up very organically. For example, if I found out they were a writer, that kind of thing. And very, very occasionally would I bring it up in small talk at work. I still believe I have not announced I'm writing a book on like my personal Facebook or personal Instagram page, but there are people who know, and I'm obviously online talking about this, right? So I just want to share an example of an interaction that I had that made me realize like, oh, I guess I'm embarrassed to tell people I'm writing a book. Like, this is really weird, but I guess I'm embarrassed. So, anyways, last winter, I was working at an inpatient rehab facility in Oregon for a occupational therapy job. And I was only there or planning to be there for 6 months, as this job was intended as a travel contract. So I spent a lot of my time off exploring the beautiful nature that the Pacific Northwest has to offer. But because I had a lot of free time and I didn't know anyone in this small town, I also spent a lot of time deep in this writing project, aka the book that I hope to publish in Q1 of 2024. And I knew since I was new to the area and I wasn't going to be there long that the stakes were low, as in, like, I wasn't sharing my book writing goals with colleagues that I knew I would continue to see for the next several years. Like, basically, if I ended up not following through with my goals, my lovely coworkers in Oregon weren't going to follow up with me and be like, hey, where's the book, right? But honestly, it was this one interaction that I'm about to share with you in which I realized, like, it is really, really interesting that something so cool and so exciting, like writing a book, can initially feel like such an embarrassing goal. Okay, so let's cut to the scene, right? So I'm working. I'm standing in the hallway of this inpatient rehab facility. I'm putting on my yellow gown over my scrubs before I go into work with my patient. And while I'm doing this, my coworker, a physical therapist, starts chatting to me. He starts asking me about my weekend and what I do during my spare time, just normal small talk, right? And I remember, like, after saying things like, oh, I went for a hike, I'm checking out this scene, the scenery and all this stuff. I also was like, well, I've been writing a lot. I like to write. But, like, this came across as just, like, very shy and embarrassed that I was sharing that I like to write. Like, it felt like a very personal thing to share with a coworker. And note here that I didn't say I'm writing a book. That would have been way too scary at that time. But this coworker, we will call him James, goes, really? Like, that's so cool. Like, what do you like to write? And James, like, this was a pretty normal and genuine response, right? Like, honestly, if someone told me that they were writing a book, I think I would have responded like James. But even though this was so normal, his response threw me for a loop. And I did think about saying something like, oh, not much. Like, I just like to journal during my evenings, like it's a way to de-stress. But I figured this would be a good opportunity to practice telling people I'm writing a book, right? Like, I am only here for like a short period of time. So I did it. I said, well, actually, I'm writing a book. And then I started to feel really nervous. I just kind of like let some silence linger. I don't even think it was that much silence, but after I said it, like it did feel really scary in that moment. And it sounds ridiculous, but I was really, really hoping he wasn't going to ask me what the book is about. Even though, again, that's a very logical response. If someone tells you they're writing a book, you probably are going to ask, what is the book about, right? So I was hoping you wouldn't ask this, but can you guess what happened? Can you guess? He asks me, what is this book about? And honestly, my response was along the lines of like, I'm still trying to figure it out. It's a fiction novel. There's a bit of magic and mystery there. And then I immediately escaped into my patient's room to start their therapy session. Like, it definitely probably came across from his perspective that I was embarrassed to be sharing that I'm writing a book. And this like just really got me wondering, like, after this interaction, like I had this interaction after telling like people close to me that I'm writing a book or thinking about writing a book, but I hadn't shared with coworkers very often. Like, it just really got me thinking, like, why? Like, what the heck is so embarrassing about writing a book? Like, there are much more embarrassing scenarios in my life that I can think of other than the fact that I want to write and publish a book. Like, honestly, it is quite ridiculous when I think about it, but I really wanted to make this episode because I'm really, really curious if anyone else has experienced this phenomenon of being embarrassed to tell people you are writing a novel. And as a side note, while writing the script for this episode, I Googled, is it vain to write a book? Because this was another thought that came up. And apparently, yes, objectively, this is a very vain goal, and it is a normal concept for writers to struggle with. So I do invite you to go down your own Google rabbit hole. But in the meantime, I wanted to share some reflections, and I'm hoping that they will help you as well. So to answer this question, why the heck am I embarrassed to share that I'm writing a book, something that is objectively not embarrassing? I came to the following conclusions. Number one, it feels vain, and I don't like portraying a vain self-image. So telling people that I'm writing a book feels very, very self-centered to me. Number two was that if I share this goal, it becomes real, and then I actually have to finish this thing. Like, honestly, like, as exciting as writing and publishing a book is to pursue, it is a lofty goal. There's a lot of stuff involved to get to that point. And then number three was there was definitely some negative self-talk, like in the far, far back of my brain that went, really? You write a book? That a small part of me was afraid others would think as well. And the last thing that came up for me was that it feels silly and not as cool to share that I'm writing a fiction novel. Like, I started to feel like I would be more legit if I was writing a nonfiction book. Like, it would make more sense, and it would somehow be a less embarrassing goal to share because a nonfiction book could help people. And this one is like really interesting to unpack, because probably if I did decide to write a nonfiction book, I might have similar thoughts of like, who am I to write a nonfiction book? So I'm not sure, but this is what was coming up. Like, I started not wanting to tell people I'm writing a fiction book. And I think it's because I know a few people that are writing a nonfiction book, and I don't know many people in my personal life that are writing a fiction book. So maybe there was that comparison there. But anyways, these things that I just shared, like, it feels vain, the goal becomes real, the negative self-talk, nonfiction is better than fiction. Not saying this is true, right? But if I'm truly thinking and believing these things that I just shared, of course, sharing with people that I'm writing a book is not going to feel like the fun and exciting news that it should be. Like, if you are writing and publishing your first book, I am so excited for you. I want to share, and I want to be in that excitement with you. So anyways, I know in the back of my mind that I have the goal of turning New Grad Magic into a 3-part series, and I'm just so curious to find out if this weird embarrassment will go away once I finish the first book. Like, once I prove to myself that I can actually write and finish a book. But anyways, I really, really, really want to unpack the reasons for being embarrassed to write a book. And if you are feeling similar, I'm hoping that you can take away some more insights from this episode that I'm about to share. Like, I want to end this on a really positive note that hopefully has you feeling like, okay, maybe I am feeling this like embarrassment and this doubt, but it's okay. And here's why. Here's just, I have 4 nuggets that I want to leave you with. So the first thing is that if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, I'm going to assume that you want to write and publish a book. Like, I'm going to assume you have made those decisions. And even if this is an objectively vain goal, so what? Even if it's an objectively vain goal, you still have that goal, right? It doesn't change the fact that you still have the goal and this is still something you want to do. So I encourage you to continue writing. The second takeaway is that fiction novels can be just as helpful as nonfiction books. Even if you don't feel like you're teaching anything, you may be helping someone alleviate boredom, loneliness, sadness. Like, I want you to think of a time where you got lost in a novel and you felt like it just kind of landed in your lap at the right time in your life. Like, fiction novels do offer a huge sense of comfort for people, and that alone is extremely helpful. The third takeaway is that writing a novel is honestly quite the goal. And congratulations if you're here and you've decided on that goal, right? So It really it does make sense initially if you do want to keep this goal quiet, especially if you are having doubts about finishing the project. But the final note I want to leave you with is that at the end of the day, it is up to you whether or not you share that you're writing a novel. It's up to you when you share that you're writing a novel. It's up to you who you share this goal with. I just want to encourage you to use discernment in terms of the people that you feel like will be your biggest supports, even from the beginning. And I just really want to highlight that you can tell everyone if you want. You can shout it from the rooftops like, hey, you're going to write a book and you're going to publish a book. You can tell no one if you want. You can keep it a secret. You can just write until you're ready to publish and then tell people. Or you can tell a select few people. Like, honestly, it is up to you, and whatever is going to help you write and move forward with your first book, that is what I encourage you to choose. So if you want to connect further with me and see some behind the scenes of some publishing content, you can follow me on Instagram at author Christine Elise, and you'll also get to see how I am doing a book launch in real time. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you in the next one. And I cannot wait to see what you create, what your first book is. And yeah, I will see you next week. Bye.